What's the part of the job that energizes you most these days?
I would say the part that's the most energizing is really the idea of elevating the employee experience. I have a philosophy that the employee experience drives the client experience. The client experience ultimately is what makes sure that your firm is going to be successful, because you have to have clients to have work. But I think you get at that through the employee experience. So I feel like the impact I can have, and I think I do have, on driving and elevating that employee experience every day to deliver to our clients that outstanding experience, that really energizes me.
Welcome to Morrissey Goodale's Word on the Street podcast, where it's all things AE.
I'm Mark Goodale, he's Mick Morrissey, and you are watching Morrissey Goodale's Word on the Street podcast. Mick, how the heck are you?
Doing well, Mark, and yourself?
Oh, just peachy.
That's great.
You know, we have a fantastic guest, not just a fantastic guest, but one of our favorite people.
I would say, I would agree with that, yeah.
And she is in studio with us today, Gayle Packer, CEO and President of Terracon, which holds the number 19 spot on the E&R Top 500 list. Terracon is a nationwide employee-owned engineering consulting firm specializing in geotechnical, environmental, construction materials, and facilities services, with over 7,000 people working out of more than 180 offices. Gayle, welcome to the street.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
The Terracon story really is a remarkable story. And I think, Mark, you may have omitted there that Terracon was also the 2023 recipient of the M&A Best Practices Award as part of our Excellence in Acquisitive Growth Award series.
Yes.
And I think that's pretty important to reference, because to be a really successful employee-owned firm, got to blend organic growth with acquisitive growth, and Terracon does that better than anybody else, I think.
Indeed. And Gayle, again, thanks so much for joining us today. And if anybody out there wants to know where to go and where not to go in the world, Gayle is literally a world traveler.
Yes.
I last year I was telling you, hey, Gayle, we're going to Africa. So yeah. So here's what you want to do when you get there. What countries are you going to? It's now. Where were you most recently? What was your last trip?
My last trip was actually a combination of going to London for the insurance renewal in January. I always call that the dog and pony show. Like that, I have, and I'm not sure if I'm the dog or the pony. But we get our professional liability insurance off the London market, and so you have to go and present to all the underwriters and talk about the company and your risk management strategies and your strategic plan and all these things. I don't have to go very often, but this year I had to go. And I took my mom with me, and we went from London and took the tunnel to Paris. She'd never been to Paris before. So I have a great picture on my phone of my mother eating an entire plate of profiteroles. Like, not one, a plate of profiteroles. I'm like, can I have a bite? And she's like, you can have one, but I'm never coming back to Paris. I'm eating them all.
Watch your hands. if you value your digits,
exactly.
You'll be careful.
I had a little bit of blood when I tried to get the second bite, but no scars.
Wow.
So, so that's the most recent place that it was kind of a combo. But I'm going to Tanzania and Kenya later this year for a couple of weeks. So that was a really big trip this year, so I didn't go anyplace else.
Gayle, you've been to Africa before.
I have.
How many continents have you been to?
6 of the 7.
Wow. So
I have Antarctica to go.
That's the one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one.
Yeah. Is that going to be a cruise, or are you going to go on land?
I'm going on land, I think.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah,
That's
we'll
great.
see.
Beautiful in the summer.
Where are the penguins? Antarctica or the Arctic?
Antarctica.
Okay.
And is that Arctic or Arctic?
We'll get back to that.
With or without the Irish accent. Depends.
Now, Australia you've been to, and
Yes.
I read that fantastic Bill Bryson book,
Yes.
In the Sunburned Country, and I find things funny, but I don't laugh out loud. And as you said, you were laughing. I was laughing out loud. People thought I was nuts in my own house, just sitting in the living room reading it. And when he talks about how he's falling asleep and how he looks falling asleep, brilliant. Anyway, we don't have to do a book review here, but it was awesome.
It's a great
Thank
book.
you for the
Yeah.
read.
Yeah.
Can I just say that I've also been to Australia, and he has shown no interest in my travel to Australia. Whereas when you come on as a guest, it's Australia this, books that.
Get me a book. Get me a
nothing.
book next
I
time.
heard
Maybe we'll
nothing.
talk about it.
Yeah, no interest at all.
I think I gave you a book for Africa, too, didn't I? Whatever you do, don't run.
Yeah. I figure run. It'll give you something to do in the last 7 seconds of your life anyway.
It's a great book about the safari guide and the stories of people doing really ignorant stuff
Yeah.
on safari. It's
that's
really
great.
funny.
Yeah, it's It's funny after you go. Before you go, it's not so funny. So Gayle, you've been, I think it was 2019, was it that, or 2018 rather, you became president in 2018, and this firm is a major force in the industry. You became president in 2018 and CEO in 2019. When you step back and think about your roles, what's the part of the job that energizes you most these days?
I would say the part that's the most energizing is really the idea of elevating the employee experience. Well, I have a philosophy that the employee experience drives the client experience. The client experience ultimately is what makes sure that your firm is going to be successful, because you have to have clients to have work. But I think you get at that through the employee experience. So I feel like the impact I can have, and I think I do have, on driving and elevating that employee experience every day to deliver to our clients that outstanding experience, that really energizes me a lot.
It energizes the firm too. And I've been in lots and lots, and Mick has been in lots and lots of firms. And Mick, you might agree with this. When you walk into a firm, it's like walking into a city in some ways. Some are really vibrant and some just have no pulse whatsoever. And I know walking into Terracon, when you talk about that experience, it goes through the firm. You can feel it. You can definitely just feel it. So it's an impressive thing. And 2018, 2019, coming up on COVID, there were some defining moments in your leadership journey over the last 5 years, I would say, Mick. Can you share some of those stories with us?
Sure. So I became the president in July of 2018, and was taking the helm from a very successful CEO at Terracon who I learned a ton from, and the company was doing well. And it's one of those like, oh God, I hope I don't screw it up kind of thing. It's just stepping into that role, So that was 2018, and we had just finished getting ready to launch a new strategic plan, which we were launching in January of 2019. And as part of that process, we re-articulated the company's values. A company's values shouldn't change all the time, and They didn't necessarily, but as part of that strategic planning process, we started the conversation with, well, what are our values today? And sitting around the room with 25 of the senior and junior, but really successful, committed people to the company, we could not articulate the exact words.
Interesting.
And we're okay, we need to take a fresh look at this. So we re-articulated the values into 6 words. And we were launching the strategic plan in January of 2019 when I was becoming CEO. And we spent a lot of time those first 3 months talking about values. What are our values? Why do they matter? How do you make decisions using those values? And we're in the middle of that work when April 15th, 2019 happened. And we had a employee fatality where we had an employee back over another employee on a job site. And this is a company who is committed to safety, who has been on a significant, transformative safety journey for the past 10 years at that point. And this happened in the first 100 days. And that event honestly rocked the company to its core. Because if you asked anybody in the company what's the most important thing at Terracon, safety is what they would tell you. And yet this happened. So, I have goosebumps talking about it. Yeah. Leading through that challenge, really forcing an entire organization to look at themselves in the mirror. What was my role in this? What is my responsibility for this? How could this have happened? And if it could happen there, could it happen here at my office? That was a very challenging leadership time, but it also gave me and the executive team a chance to really put our money where our mouth was, so to speak, with living those values. Yeah. How do we interact with the company? How do we interact with the family? Yeah. How do we support the organization and drive learning throughout the organization to make sure this doesn't happen again? So don't brush it aside. We talk about it today. We have pictures of that young man in a lot of our offices with it. Remember him and how it happened, and we all have a responsibility to play with that. So it really gave us a chance to lead with those values and kind of cement, no, we're not just talking about it, we're going to live this and we're going to do it well. And then in less than a year, COVID happens, and it was once again
one of those, take this job?
Exactly, one of those moments where you're we're going to make our decisions on what we need to do as a company, based on our values. And I kept saying to people, listen, my first job is to keep you safe. My second job is to keep you employed.
Right, right.
So we have to make decisions that can't be all or nothing, that have to be, what are the values? How do we keep people safe? We're not going to compromise on that. But we're also not going to ask you to wrap yourself in cotton in a bubble
Right,
and stay
right.
in your house 24/7. If there's a way for you to be able to do your job safely, we want you to be out there doing your job safely. So how can we balance those things in the right way? And I think that looking back, those two significant events in the first 18 months of being on the job really drove home that values are not just something that pretty pictures hanging
Right.
on the wall. They're not
Exactly.
words on the wall. They're how we have to live as leaders, how we have to
Exactly.
make decisions, and what we expect from the organization.
I remember in early 2020 talking with you, a specific conversation about the COVID crisis had just started, and speaking with you and talking about, my gosh, this must be such a big challenge for you, such a big crisis. This must be your how are you handling this, et cetera, et cetera. He said, no, the first big crisis and of equal priority is safety, based upon the fatality, the unfortunate fatality that had happened in the farm. And I was struck with your commitment to both of those things then that you're talking about now, which is priorities keeping you safe and keeping you employed. And I remember you talking about, we both talked about how we both remembered the Great Recession in 2008 when everybody just started cutting people. And you said, we're not going to use that playbook.
Yeah.
We're not going to use that playbook.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What struck me at that time, too, was the number of CEOs that I was talking to. Because I was on CEO calls, it seemed like all the time. Everyone, what are you doing? What are you doing? Which is great and informative, but that doesn't mean that that's what's right for your
Right,
company and
right.
what you should go do. And I truly was struck at the time about the number of people who said, this is just going to be like the Great Recession. We just have to worry about the money. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not how we're approaching it.
Yeah, it's not your DNA. And one way that I've experienced the safety culture in the firm manifesting itself is every meeting that I attended anyway starts out with a safety moment, and somebody recollects something, and everybody's tuned in. It's nobody's tuned out then. It's pretty interesting.
I think it's worth putting some context on you attending meetings at Terracon. So you weren't attending because your geotechnical capabilities, your environmental science competency.
Questionable.
It wasn't for those reasons. It was from a business advisory
we can debate that another time, but point taken.
Yeah. Oh, and on that note, I just want to notice that, or draw attention to the fact that we have a Terracon mug here
You
up
have a-
front.
you have
Branding is important.
Vintage
Vintage
Terracon mug.
So vintage insofar as what? The logo?
Insofar as for the first time in the company's 60-year history, back in 2023,
Yes.
2022, we refreshed our brand at Terracon, and I believe that you have the ability to change the vintage to
We
the
have
current,
the ability.
the current
We're
brand.
We are tech forward here.
Yeah, and it's
so-
funny because when we started that process of kind of what is the brand and consistent with our values and how are we living, the first question by many of our folks were, we're not going to touch the logo, are we? It was panic in the streets. But not only did we get there, now when we all see the vintage logo, we think, man, that looks really old.
Yeah, original Coke. Yeah, it's but it's so important to keep up with the time and not look like you're in the past. And
Right.
you have to change that up. You want to keep the lineage. In fact, I am wearing vintage Terracon socks. I don't know if that can be
they're not vintage,
seen.
actually. When we first started the branding process, there was, that's great. We can look at the brand and how we're living the brand and using the new strategic plan and our values to kind of look at the because your brand's beyond your logo. It's the whole
Right.
experience that someone has working at Terracon or your reputation in the marketplace. But the first comment was, we're not going to touch the logo, though. We're not going to touch the
can't do
logo
that.
because it
Don't
had
do
never
that.
been changed. And
Right.
eventually we got there, and it's a much more energizing and like movement forward kind of logo. And now when we see the old logo, we all think it's
That's like
really
old home movies.
So,
Yeah.
but we are calling it vintage, and it's still you can still see it in many offices and
Original
sometimes in the
Terracon and new
signage outside the office. Because we're going to be moving in a year. We don't want to spend the money, and that's classic employee-owned firm behavior.
So there's obviously real trials that you go through as a leader of a firm. There's big things, little things, brand changing, all kinds of things happen. And what do you think people get wrong when they try to picture what it's like to lead a firm of Terracon's size and scope? Again, over 7,000 people, over 180 offices. Are there any sort of common misconceptions about what life is like in your shoes?
You know, as I've been thinking about that, and the one thing that I feel like is always, people look at me funny when they start talking about this very detailed situation somewhere in an office, and they think that I know all the details. I don't know the details of that. And sometimes it happens like a peer or a client sometimes, like, well, that project, the project, blah, blah, blah. So, and I have to look at them and smile. I'm like, that's great. Or I can check into that and get back to you. But I don't have access to the details of 80,000 projects and 7,000 employees off the top of my head. I have to know a lot.
Yeah.
But I can't know that level of detail everywhere. And that always, I think, surprises people when they go down a rabbit hole of this particular instance. And I don't know the details of that instance.
Well, it's an interesting, it sounds so obvious, but when you bring it up, it makes sense. And Mick, I think the average size firm in our industry is probably in the 20s or 30s. Consulting engineering firms are, not that
Pretty small.
big.
Yeah, single office.
So the typical owner knows all of their people very well. And so at 7,000 people, it might be hard for leaders to understand there are people that you wouldn't recognize potentially.
Right.
Right. And so it's the scale is impressive.
The scale's impressive. So you're $1 billion plus organization now.
Yeah.
So let's say pre-2019.
Yeah.
Let's say you didn't know all the details then, right?
Right.
Okay. So now we're in 2025. The world has changed in terms of how technology is playing out in our industry. And I know in Terracon, driven by digitization and deployment of artificial intelligence. So the details have changed dramatically and are changing quickly. So how do you equip yourself to take the firm towards the next billion as a CEO? And I don't think you're unusual in that regard, in terms of not understanding or being aware of all the details.
Right.
You can't. But things have changed so much, even in your tenure, as to how the business is run and what folks are focused on in deploying technology. So how do you, if you don't know all the details, you must know something that allows you to feel comfortable about making decisions. Has that changed, or is that evolving?
Well, it absolutely is evolving, and I think that one of the traps that people get stuck in this kind of area is I have to know the answer before I ask the question publicly, and I don't think that's true at all. I think that right now, if CEOs or leaders are waiting to know the answer of exactly where this technology or this transformation is heading, you're already too late, and you'll never catch up. So I think it becomes this question of how do you surround yourself with people who want to make that their entire existence, like looking at these types of transformations, spending all their time in AI, spending all their time in how do we transform the business process? How do we continue to serve our clients in a different way or provide data to them before we ever set foot on a job site? And then how do we charge for that? So getting a team of people who, like, they wake up every day and that's their passion. You have to find those folks. You have to ask the big question and then find the folks who are going to help you answer it, and then give them the license to go there.
Yeah.
And when we started talking about digitizing our geotechnical data 10, 15 years ago, 12 years ago, I mean, I still remember Vic Donald was our geotechnical service line director at the time. He was the CEO of an acquisition that we did, and he is a brilliant visionary thinker. And he came to the executive committee 3 times asking us for a budget to go pick all of the data out of the Iron Mountain boxes that are scattered all over the U.S. or in the back office closets and filing cabinets sitting in all these offices. And he wants to scan it all in so that we can reuse the data. And we all looked at him like he had grown a second brain on his, like, you got something growing there and it's not good. Like, who's going to pay for that? What are we going to do with it? But he saw what we could do with it. And so, okay, let's try it out and see. Yeah. So we're light years ahead of a lot of other people trying to figure out what to do with your data on that front. But part of that is creating an environment where people can bring up these crazy ideas or say, hey,
Yeah.
this, what got us here is not going to get us there. And we have to look at it this way and keep moving in that direction and trying things out as you're going to it. Now, I don't know all the details of where we are, but I do like read a lot, listen to a lot, keep my eye on what's going on outside the industry. And then my job is to come back and ask the big question.
Yeah.
My job is to come back and say, where are we on this and how are we going to go faster? And if I give you an extra $1 million, where would you put it and why? Which is not just that's what we're going to go do,
Right.
but that starts the conversation.
It encouraged and that's so important. It's so easy to shut that kind of thinking down without even realizing you're doing it.
Right.
It's very easy to do that. And you're going to get stuff wrong. I mean, that's the future's impossible to you can try to kind of figure your way there, but it's impossible to predict. And in the projects that you work on, you have right and wrong. You get paid to be right in those things. But when you're trying to grow a company and you're trying to innovate, you have to have a healthy relationship with wrongness and not think of it as the bedbug of intellect, but how you get things right eventually. And also, I think, Gayle, too, you're talking about responsible autonomy. We're going to trust that our professionals can use their autonomy responsibly. We're not giving them the autonomy. They have it, but we're going to trust that they use it responsibly. And that's the exact opposite of command and control, which I think would stifle your growth overall.
Right. I think too, I always feel like I have to say this. I answer this question not like we figured it all out. I mean, if I went back and we talked to my whole team on this, they'd be like, we are still working on this and we don't really know what. Absolutely. Like we don't have the answer, but we're working at it.
That's
and
right.
We're actively working at it, both with time and money and brain power about how we're going to get there.
How important is your board of directors in helping you think outside the box or push the envelope or push for change, positive change in the firm?
Yeah, I think our board is invaluable. So we have a board that's 5 internal, 4 external directors. And in particular, on the things around like where's the industry going or technology, or are you looking at this big enough? Have you really challenged yourselves on this one topic because you've talked about it the same way 3 years in a row and that's not okay? I think that their insights are really invaluable to me and their feedback to me on a regular basis. So there's nothing more humbling than sitting through a board meeting and then like for the next hour afterwards, like you have that time with the external director saying, this went well, but you could have improved on this. You could have done this better. You could have figured this out. I think you guys are missing the boat on this topic. It's great feedback.
Invaluable.
And it's kind of in real time.
Yeah.
And then it helps improve you for the next board meeting.
Well, it's so healthy to do that because professional athletes will look for that kind of those negative assessments or critical assessments. They don't necessarily want to hear it,
Right.
but they'll pull it out. Is there a hitch in my swing? What do I look like? They know they can't see the kick me sign on their back, so they need somebody to tell them. And it's tough for people to give that feedback a lot of times. They think they can't be helpful by giving that those negative assessments when that's actually the gold. That's
Yeah.
how you continue to progress and improve.
And I think where people get hung up on that is it's hard to hear. And like you're giving somebody feedback they're not going to want to hear. They're not going to like it. And so many times people are worried about, well, they're not going to like me, or that's not
That's
a
right.
nice thing to do. Or
Want to
it's
stay in
not
a good relationship
it's
even
not
if it's
a-
fake. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's not going to make that
No.
person better. The kindest thing you can do for them is to be clear about where they're not getting it right.
And when people receive that information, it's 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, it's an assessment. It's not a fact. It's just their opinion.
Right.
So it can't be right or wrong. But when you're receiving it, we argue mentally and we agree or disagree with it. It doesn't even make sense to agree or disagree with an opinion or say it's right or wrong. And so we take it personally. It's negative. It's about us. It's got to be correct. And so that's why when it lives like an assertion in your brain, that's when you start taking things personally. And it only just takes practice, Gayle, to get good at it. It's not like you're good or bad at something. It's just you practice or you're unpracticed. So the more you hear that negative assessment, the more you can make use of it. So I think that's a great part of the culture and it's part of the growth, which, by the way, we've heard you talk about growth and in different ways. And I think you've called it purposeful growth. and growing for growth's sake. What's your sort of philosophy on growth? You're 7,000 people. You're 180 offices. Some might say, well, what do you need to grow for?
Yeah.
There's lots of firms that aren't even close to that size.
Yeah, so we start with the premise that growth is critical to our success. First, it's critical to be able to continue to serve our clients more broadly and more thoroughly in the areas that we practice. But it also provides people career opportunities. I mean, if you look at the number one reason employees leave a firm, a lack of opportunity for growth.
Right. Yep.
So if you're not growing, you're not giving your employees the opportunity to grow.
Right.
Like that's part of it. And then just practically, as an employee-owned firm, if you're not growing, you are not going to be able to sustain employee ownership.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. The model doesn't work.
breaks
Or
down.
if there's a model out there that works, I've never seen it or heard anybody who had it.
Yeah.
So it is critical to what we do. At the same time, we use the expression prosperous growth or safe, profitable growth. It's a three-legged stool. First, it has to be safe. If we can't do it safely, we're not going to do it. Even if it's millions of dollars of revenue, if we can't do it safely, we don't know how to do it safely, we're not going to do that. And then it has to be profitable, and then we want to grow. So we don't have a specific, it has to be X% a year growth or X% a year. It's the combination of those three things. They're all important, but they're probably important in that order too, like safe, profitable growth.
Within those three things, I'm always struck, and I was struck this morning when I looked at this. You had liked on LinkedIn a post by a woman who is your HR director for the Western region. And I believe it was a photo of her and two other women going to an intern summit in the West. And so when I looked at her career path, she had a number of positions before joining Terracon. And then you could see the progression within Terracon from an HR specialist to HR director. And I look at that at Terracon. I look at that at similar employee-owned firms, comparable firms, Burns & Mac, Black & Veatch, et cetera, HDR. And you look at the career paths for people, and they're remarkable. And, you know, a case in point is Vanessa, right?
Yeah.
Your marketing director. And I think that's an overlooked part of, you know, I think we often think about mergers and acquisitions and growth and capitalization, et cetera, and you got to think about, because you started with this, elevating the employee experience. For so many of the folks that work in our industry, it's been able to work somewhere, you know, where they do feel safe, where they do feel they're contributing, where they do feel valued, and where they see a path, right? So that you know, allows them to feel good about so many other aspects of their life that they're progressing. And that's something that I'm always struck with Terracon.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And Vanessa is actually the brilliant mind responsible for the rebranding effort at Terracon. She's remarkable. And
I don't have
we
to touch the mug again, do I?
You don't have to touch the
Okay,
mug again.
thank you.
It's fine.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great example of, like, she and I have worked together for 20 years.
Yeah.
And not because we both started at like large positions at Terracon. I was reviewing contracts, and she came in to like run some proposals for the corporate office and be the marketing person for the corporate office kind of thing. So, and we've just worked together. Our careers have grown together, and we've learned so much together over the years that, I mean, I trust her with my life kind of thing.
Before we move off the new logo, so you were, for 60 years, you were a monochromatic firm. Can I put it that way?
For 57 years.
57 years. Now you're a multicolor firm. But can you describe or explain what the three colors are, or the colors are in the logo?
Well, the colors went through sort of the stratification of our services, but also it's a nod to the split in the T is still a nod to the old split in the T that we had, but it was bringing it together.
Yeah.
And it's a better organization if we're all working together. And then it's the colors were kind of a nod to the service lines and the variability of services that we have from earth to sky.
There it is.
And how do we move that forward?
Yeah, that's what I remember in the
earth to
discussion. Sorry about that, Mark. Yeah.
If you could see my socks, you would see that same
I don't want to see your
stratification.
socks.
It's fine.
I really want to move on from the socks.
That's
I think.
fine.
Yeah.
So, going back to career trajectory, you had to take some risks, as we all do in our careers. Do you have a risk that you can remember taking in your career that was particularly rewarding? And if so, what did you learn from it?
Yeah, so the biggest risk I took in my career was coming to work at Terracon, honestly. So
You weren't a
So
little girl
my-
thinking Terracon someday. Right?
no, my background was in agriculture, and then I went to law school and I was practicing law. And I was practicing law in corporate and tax and employee benefits work, and I did that in private practice at large firms for about 6 years, 5.5 of which I really disliked. And it has nothing to do with the firms. I worked at great firms. I worked with great lawyers. I learned a lot. It just was not what I wanted to do with my career. And at the same time, like, I had to pay off the law school loans. Like, I paid for all that myself. And there's a lot of loans that come along with that. And so I was getting paid really well at a big firm. And I'm like, how do I pay down these loans? Because I got to figure out something else to do. And it was getting to the point in my career as a lawyer that if I don't get out now, I'm going to be here.
Yeah.
So I put myself on a timeline. May 15th, 2004, I am going to have a different job by June 30th. I've been like playing around with back of napkin business plans or something else to go do. But if I have to flip burgers at McDonald's for a while, I will. I can pay my bills, but I got to stop this because I can't keep working the hours I'm working and actually move on from here.
Yeah. And if you're doing it just for the money, it really never works out.
It was sucking my soul.
Yeah.
It was
not
not
worth
a
it.
good place for me
Not
to be.
worth it.
And again, like great people. Like I worked with great people. I worked at great firms, but it just was not what I wanted to do. So I took this job at Terracon. Literally, like next day, friend sent, Terracon's looking for a contracts review attorney. I knew people that worked there. I'm like, it's a good firm, and it's regular hours, and I can figure out which one of these business plans is gonna make a go of it. So on June 15th, 2004, I started at Terracon reviewing contracts. And so I literally thought 12 to 18 months, I'm out of here. I got a promotion to co-general counsel 6 months later. And then about a year and a half after that, I went to the CEO and said, this acquisition stuff that we are doing, we are not doing it well. And I think there's a better way to do it. And I would like to be working with that. And David said, I don't want my lawyer running the acquisitions program. And I said, great, I won't be your lawyer. Solves 2 problems. We're in good shape. And he kind of looked at me funny. I'm like, it's not a threat. This is not a threat. It's not an ultimatum. I love the company. I like what I'm doing right now. But in 10 years, I'm not going to be a lawyer.
It's just the way it is. Just the way it is.
So you mentioned David. So you're talking about David
Gabrey.
So David Gabrey was the CEO
Yes.
before you became CEO.
Right.
And David had been with the firm 20 years plus? 30 years?
20 plus.
Yeah.
He was CEO for 19 years.
Came from Dames and Moore
Wood or Clyde.
back. Okay.
Yeah.
My observation of the relationship that you and David Gabrey had in terms of moving the needle in virtually every aspect of Terracon, with the executive team that you had and the operational team that you had, was that it was a remarkably successful partnership. David is now Chairman Emeritus.
Yes.
You're CEO. Do you have a partnership now within the firm that you can rely on to replicate that, or are you setting that up in a different way, either by design or by this is the deck of cards that we have?
Yeah, I think that you're right that David and I had an amazing partnership, and I have so much respect. I learned so much from him, and we could not be 2 more different people.
Right.
Yeah.
And we both recognized that, but
Yeah.
we always had a very honest relationship. And there are times when he would be giving me feedback, I'm like, I am not ready to hear this.
Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. Yeah.
But he also reminds me sometimes of the things that I said to him and he's like, I couldn't believe you said that to me. I'm like, I probably shouldn't have said that to you. But anyway, but where we were in size and scale at the time that David and I had that partnership, very successful partnership for many years, we're not there anymore. So when I stepped into the role, David stepped into the role when there were 1,200 employees. I stepped into the role when there were 4,500 employees.
Yeah.
You can't do the job the same way. And because I had been working with him pretty much in that entire growth span, that can work. But looking around, you can't do that the same way going
Right.
forward. So I would say I have a fantastic partnership like that with the executive team that I
Yeah.
have. There's 8 of us on that team. So it's not the same as David and I have, but it's a broader partnership, and my expectation is that team has that partnership, not just with me, but with each other.
Yeah. So I think that's an important lesson for future CEOs or CEOs that are early in their career to hear, right? Because there's a model that CEOs, if you look at the typical CEO in this industry, they've been with their firm for 20 plus years, they've been in the role about 10, 15 years or so. and far too often they're taking the last model and trying to replicate it, and you can't do that. Or if you can do it, well, you're one of the 1%. I would allow me to suggest as well that you're building that model, that partnership with your executive team. I'd suggest you have done as well as any other CEO in building that partnership with the board as well. And so you're getting support and encouragement and kind of collaboration with from the executive team and the board in a way that's very, very powerful, I think.
Yeah, I think it is too. I'm very grateful, actually, and we work really hard at it.
Yeah.
To maintain that and to keep going forward like that.
Yeah.
So thank you.
You mentioned something that's interesting to me, and that is you just came to the realization that at 1,200 people, it's a different animal when you're at the size of firm you have now, 180 offices, over 7,000 people. How the heck do you keep them all aligned yet adaptable at the same time? That is no mean feat.
Yeah, and we're not perfect at it, but we start with a strategic plan, and that's, you helped us work on that. That's why you were in our Terracon office a couple times in the past couple of years. But it's really about setting the clear expectation of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what we're going to be really tight on. Like, we all have to do it this way. And there are other things like, listen, this is the goal. How you get there can vary a little bit in your office because you have a company culture and you also have an office culture. It happens, and people think it has to be the same. It will never be the same. So give up that and go for what's excellent. It's not perfect. What's excellent? How do we get to excellent? And drive that culture that has to be consistent with the values. It has to be consistent with our culture. But if it's a little variable on these items, great. Because that makes it important to the people who work in that office. If they care about it, they make it part of the culture.
And that is the skill set you have to be able to pull that off has to be built over time. I don't think anybody comes into that role just knowing that without experience going into it. And when you see today's emerging leaders, is there anything that you see that they need to hear more of that they're not hearing enough of?
Yeah. So before I answer that question, let me also go back to that alignment question on because there's also an alignment around the markets and the clients and the strategies. And so we have an organization, like the Matrix kind of organization, that has national sector leaders. The beauty of the work that we do is that we can do it in pretty much any market sector, and we're doing it over 180 geographies. So you get to blend that client sector, the type of services we're providing, and the geography to kind of come to what's great and what can be even better in each individual office. But we have alignment at the national level with our national sector directors, our operations directors. We do a lot of work on that. We've got a big 2-day meeting coming up in August to do the business planning for next year, where they're all there together, working together on what that needs to be. So there's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes to drive that business plan consistently forward as well.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean you get consistent results, because there's all kinds of reasons for that. But it's both the culture side and the business planning side.
The world happens. And I wish I could find a better word than corralling, because that has some negative implications. But that's essentially how you do it. Otherwise you're just going to be who knows what you are. And you can't brand it. You can't execute on it. But it's again, it's not an easy thing to do at that size. But to your point, the principles apply. For sure.
Yeah. And I had a competitor tell me one time, the only time we ever can get a client or an employee away from you is when you're not consistent. Watch my head explode, So the whole company knows this. I've told this story multiple times. Everybody know, we have to be consistently excellent, not just consistent. I'm no interest in being consistently mediocre.
Yes.
Consistently excellent. How do we drive that? So that's part of the next strategic plan. But you asked about the emerging professionals and emerging leaders.
Yes.
There are a couple of things that I always feel like I want to make sure that they understand. And one is that it will never be perfect. I mean, anytime there's a system that involves human beings, we're all by definition flawed, and it will never be a perfect system. So you've got to be able to adjust to make it better, like driving to make it better, but also recognizing perfection can't be your goal. And if it's not perfect, you're giving up.
You can
can't
pursue it.
You can pursue perfection.
And that'll create excellence. But you can't let perfect be the enemy of better.
Right.
And that
Right.
can really stifle a large
Yeah.
growing firm.
And I think that we have a generation in the workforce. They're not coming into, they're in the workforce.
That's right.
Who's had their entire lives scripted. Like we did that. Like we scripted their lives for them. We scheduled the play dates. We scheduled the lessons. Like we've given them a scripted life, and they come into an organization and we don't have that scripted. So we have to be able to adjust to what they need, but also help them understand life is never going to be entirely scripted. And what I really want them to know is that personal resilience is a trait that you've got to figure out how you can get there.
Oh, it's a great point. And when you think about it, Gayle, even their formal training, and the types of training that they went through, it's really curriculum regimented. There's not a lot of electives, and so they're not asked or expected to take responsibility for what they're learning. And so it's just put me in the program, point me in the direction, I'll go. And once you get into that professional setting, you have responsibility for what you're learning. And that reflection, it's not taught.
Yeah.
And so they have to learn that sort of on the job. Like architects are taught reflection in their work, but they don't take it into their businesses. But that reflection is, okay, what did I learn? And how could it change my world going forward? It's more like see problem, solve problem, move on to the next problem. Was that the right problem to solve? Oh, we don't know, but it was moving, so we solved it. And you end up doing stuff that doesn't matter.
Right.
And you don't have that luxury.
Right.
And no matter how large of a firm you are, you don't have the luxury to do stuff that doesn't matter. So it's a real important lesson that you bring.
Where that
bring
came
up.
up too so as part of the last strategic planning process, we had a group of emerging leaders present to us early on in the process. And they were given, and thanks, Mick helped me work with some of these questions that we asked them. Put yourself in 2035, and they had an hour to give us a present. They had 3 months to work on it with an hour to give us a presentation. They were brilliant.
They were
absolutely
brilliant.
They were really, really
brilliant and challenging. And I always said, like, I told the executive team and the senior leadership that was sitting there, I'm like, listen, no matter how bad they say we are at what we're doing today, none of you are allowed to quit. Like, this is about challenging us over the next 10 years, how we have to get better. Absolutely brilliant presentation. But I heard two things in those presentations that shocked the heck out of me. One was when we asked them who was the executive team in 2035, they had a position called the Chief Accountability Officer. And I was like, what? They're like, yeah, we want people to be held accountable for doing what they said they were going to do. Like they had a Chief Accountability Officer. That surprised me. And the second piece, which was kind of related, was we just want to be told how to do it.
Yeah.
And then we'll go do it.
Exactly.
And I was like, whoa, we're going to have to change a lot of stuff because we're not going to change that about them per se. That's a generational trait.
Yep.
We have to figure out how are we going to leverage that need into success for the company and for our clients.
You can't have all lieutenants. You need some generals in there.
Yeah.
And apparently that chief accountability, I would hate to see a sketch of what that person looks like. It'd be terrifying.
If they had tools that came along with it, I don't know.
You had talked about innovation before, and I was just interested in terms of tools or platforms or capabilities that Terracon has been developed. Are there any particular developments that you're proud of, or any digital tools or anything that you've created within the firm that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, I think there's three things that I think I'm very proud of and that are client facing in a new way. One, the earliest one was the Stage 1 product that we have, which is really all of our historical geotechnical data, in addition to public available data, but it's all of our individual data that a client can get access to. They can give us an address and we can tell them what we can expect around that area with the predictive index and like how confident we are in that information before we ever go out and put a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
It's an amazing product that gives clients a lot more access to information before even we're evaluating 10 sites. They can do that quickly.
Yeah.
Without having to go out and drill a site and understand what's there. So we could already have that available to them. So that's fantastic. We've been marketing that product for 6 or 7 years now. And it's really, really done a lot for a lot of clients. We had an employee who was concerned about when we were out doing materials testing on large job sites, like trying to geolocate all of the tests and where they could be. So he worked kind of on his spare time to come up with this product that now has turned into our client-facing platform, our client delivery platform, over time it's evolved to this Compass platform where our clients can see in real time on their desktop where we are, what we've done, what the results are, where we are in the project, all their data. It's all there visible for them to see in the location where it was taken, and they can drill down in it, and they have access to it. Especially our larger clients that have multiple projects with us, they love it. They don't want to do a project without Compass. Like that's how we want to deliver everything to those clients. And then most recently, we invested in an AI company that we now purchased, and it's developing pavement condition indices with AI. So instead of used to go out to see the condition of a pavement, and this isn't roads, this is parking lots and off-road stuff. You'd have somebody out there walking the parking lot or driving it maybe, but usually walking the parking lot and taking pictures.
Yep.
Now we can use drones and AI and plug it into our machine learning model that we've developed, and in a matter of hours give somebody an entire pavement condition index with recommendations about what they should do and how we should move forward with it.
That's a real nod to the culture that you've cultivated, that kind of thinking and risk-taking.
And I think one of the challenges that I see in discussions around technology in our industry is we want to be able to use technology to augment the brilliant brains and knowledge that we have in the industry, not something random off to the side. So I think sometimes, and we're guilty of this too, we get distracted by a bright, shiny object when, well, that's a cool technology, but how does that actually influence and improve what we're going to do for clients? Or is it just a piece of cool technology?
Right.
So it's a solution looking for a problem. Like, let's start with what are the problems our clients need to solve, or what are the problems we have in solving those problems, and solve for that.
That's a great point. You see it with the new phones. Hey, we can do this, so we'll put it in here.
Yeah. Why?
Versus, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So Gayle, we'll wanted you to reflect. We talked about reflection. I'd like you to reflect for a moment and think about, if you weren't doing this, if you weren't leading one of the nation's top consulting firms, what would you be doing? You had mentioned McDonald's earlier.
I did. Yeah.
You think you'd be? I'm glad people work there, because late at night, it's important. It is an important job, believe you me.
And for the Diet Coke drinkers of the world, it is the best Diet Coke in the world. I don't drink Diet Coke anymore, but everybody would agree with that. I think it would probably, I was in the agricultural industry before I went back to law school. Chances are I could have stayed in that industry, would have enjoyed that. But I also could see myself running a nonprofit or becoming a travel blogger. Getting paid to travel around the world would be really fun.
That seems
That was
really
one of the business
awesome.
ideas I had when I was,
do you have all of those napkins?
They weren't all on a specific napkin, but I have all the ideas. And I've actually seen 3 of them come to fruition. I'm like, man, I missed
So on the travel thing, right?
Yeah.
So revenues in 2025 will be what for the firm?
1.45.
1.45 billion.
Yeah.
Right. 180 offices. Everything's in the U.S.
Yes. We have a few projects outside the U.S. We're always doing some projects outside the U.S., but we're there for the project and back. We don't have a location outside the U.S.
So we have a CEO who's been to most of the continents, but we are one of the few almost $2 billion firms in the industry that doesn't have a presence beyond the United States. Office in Alaska? Is that right?
Yes. No office in Alaska.
Office in Hawaii?
No office in Hawaii.
Okay, so we're contiguous 48.
Continental, yep.
When will, if we're talking about consistency, right, and that we're really good when we're consistent, is it in our plans to have the Terracon brand, in Paris, in Mexico City, in Ottawa? Is that in the thinking at all for the firm? Is that necessary? Is it nice? Does it conflict with the profitable growth? Safe growth?
So at some point, that will make sense for us. But if you just look at the world economy right now, where does everybody want to be? In the U.S. Well, for now, they want to be in the U.S. The challenge with going international, there are parts of our business that can easily go international, but about 65% of our business is work that actually has to be done locally. You can't parachute people in and expect them to have all the local knowledge, particularly on the geotechnical side of things, materials testing. You're not going to make any money curing concrete, hours away. it's got to be close. You got to be local. And so for us, the question has always been, where is the next best horizon for safe, profitable growth? And for us, that's still right now in the continental United States. It's exciting. It's real sexy to say you're international. And I obviously love to travel, love to be international. But for us as a company right now, it just doesn't make sense.
At what point, sorry,
it
at
might.
at what point does the concentration in the U.S., does it become an impediment to value creation? Because does that put you more at risk that you're fully concentrated in the U.S.? So
On a macro scale, sure. But one of the ways that we counter against that, hey, if the U.S. economy tanks, is the work that we do, the types of services we provide, the variety of service that we provide, the variety of market sectors that we work in, and the variety of geographic locations. So it is unusual, not to say it hasn't happened, 1930s, that everybody's in a depression. But even in the Great Recession, everybody was in a recession, but there were still pockets of work that were still needing to get done.
Yeah.
And we were able to do that. So one of the things that we've just continually focused on is diversification of services, diversification of geographies, and diversification of market sectors. So in 2004, the launch of that strategic plan, something like 70% of our work was in the commercial retail sector. Today, that's down to around 20%. Not to say it hasn't grown, it's grown, but we've intentionally grown other market sectors faster to really hedge against that economic downturn.
All right, Mick, it is time. It is now time, your favorite part
terrific.
of our podcast. It is Word to the Wise,
Love
where
this.
we ask our guests for some wise words. Gayle, what is a piece of advice you once ignored but now find yourself passing along to others?
I think there were probably two pieces of advice that I kept hearing. One is that you can't multitask. It's like, sure I can. It turns out you actually can't. Like, your brain doesn't work
right.
like that.
It
Now,
does not.
I can sometimes feel like I can multitask better than the average person, but in general, if you really need to get something done, you can't multitask.
And
It's
task
not-
switching is,
it's-
you
it's-
throw that
it-
in
it's
with
com-
task switching, it makes you exponentially more inefficient.
Right. And there's all kinds of actual scientific studies, and you can do them yourself, and you can see, holy crap, I thought I was good at this, and I really am not. So there's that. I think the other piece is, when I entered the workforce, if you needed to be available to your clients 24/7, 365. Like, we went through this whole period where the more we could work, it was a badge of honor. Like,
right.
I don't take vacations. And I remember somebody's telling me, listen, if you don't unplug, you will be unplugged. Like, just
That's right.
you will be out
It'll
of touch.
happen.
You can't do it. And I have found myself, particularly I would say in the past 10 years, really, like, nope. When I go on vacation, I go on vacation.
Yep.
I do not check my email. I do not call back to the office. The people who need to know where I am and how to reach me, they know how to reach me, and they will let me know if there's something I need to know.
The world will go on.
The world will go on. Like, none of us are indispensable. We really aren't. And so part of your challenge as a leader is to make sure not that you can do that. In order for you to do that, everybody on our team has to be able to do that. And then you've got to enable them to be able to generate that kind of culture where everybody's going to be able to do that. And I think that's really important. And I didn't believe it when I was in my 20s.
That's really
And you have summed up leadership, which is accomplishing things through others, is basically what that is. So, Gayle, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was really
great.
fun.
And thanks to our viewers. Please like and subscribe. And we hope to see you all next time on the street.